I'm wrong. And welcome to an episode of the Turn Up for What podcast, talking your Houston Texans straight from the Great British Isles. We're not, I was going to say another episode, but we're not done one for a while because it all felt a bit pointless the last month of the season. But we've got a game to talk about and a playoff win, which is not something you can take for granted, is it? And I'll bring in the man who's joining me, who's made a number of appearances on here, Mr. Graham Henderson, also known as the Kilted Texan. Graham, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you. Yeah, you're right. There's not really been much to talk about up until the last couple of weeks, is there? When it comes to Texans football.
No. Do you know? I think it was the Jags road game I watched. Left what we were doing early, go and watch it. Missed a little bit at the start and then watched it. And I remember just turning at my mic going, "This is boring." And I don't think players always subconsciously drop their level, right? But I think the fact that you got the double header against the Colts, you were in a position effectively where you didn't need to win games for quite a long time at the end of the season. You then have this sort of malaise that comes in of this offense, which will come on, has not been great, and I just kept thinking, I don't know what the hell I'm going to talk about really, because it's just the same thing every week. And it was still quite similar to that on Saturday night, which I don't mind those kickoffs, by the way, because they suit us over for our times on 6 hours plus. That works over here. 9:30 on a Saturday, it's all right actually. And we've got that again this week because we won a game. But how do you sort of, playoffs aside for a second, how do you sort of view this season to this point?
It's been one of them absolute roller coaster, hasn't it? When you looked at, and we kind of speak periodically through the season, and when you look at all the hype and everything that went into the start of the season, and it wasn't just within the fan base. I think you could say there was pundits all over the US national media were even touting the Texans to be like a show-stopping team. We come out and we did a couple of things at the start of the year, and then it just seemed to really drop off like that. Our offense just wasn't what everyone thought it was going to be, of a carbon copy from last year. And that struggles have shown in stots and bangs all the way through this season, I think. Had some really good play, and then there's been some really bad play. And you're right, probably knowing that you had that over the Colts coasting at the end of the season, knowing you'd taken the AFC South, was there really the need to really up your levels as such? So I would say it's been a surprising, and not a surprising, it's been a good end to the season, but there's been an undercurrent of disappointment in there. From my side of things, anyway.
Yeah, I was guilty of that as well. I think I blew it up too much in my head. And I think everybody did. Yeah, you weren't alone in that, like you said. I think when you see the offensive struggles because they've gone backwards, you think, if they kind of stand still, you kind of get away with it. But I think, I suppose that probably brings us nicely into this offense, because let's be honest, right? Okay, we scored 32 points and it was a scoregami. So, an odd score, an odd game. Lots of stuff could have gone easily against you in another way, and that would have been far closer than it was. But you're pretty much 2 full quarters of football with no offensive output. And I do kind of put a lot of that on the offensive line. Now, it was almost like they almost performed in the second half as much as they did on, even though that first drive, a scoring drive in Nico Collins, was a 99-yard drive, but that was still heavy weather. It wasn't until the second half where they started to run the ball a bit better, and then they kind of started to put a grip on the game. But I just find that the internal 3 spots, I think you can't mask that. There's no way getting around. You've either got a good line or a bad line. And Puna Forward, who was a UT 7 years in the league alum, and you made him look like a Pro Bowler at the weekend. I think Scruggs struggled, and Titus Howard struggled mightily. And I don't know how easily you can get from under that contract for Titus Howard, because it seemed heavy at the time, even if he was to play his best football ahead of him at tackle. It looks even worse when he's at guard. And there was a play that summed it up for me in the second half, Graham, was when we got the penalty and ended up being 2nd and 40 on
Yeah.
our second drive where we scored a field goal. But the worst bit was, for me, he goes down, he gets a holding or a penalty, but he actually celebrated after the play as if he'd done it right and he felt as if he contributed, and then he gets flagged. And I don't know if that's just bad coaching. I don't know. And to me, it was a simple one, whereas he's outstretched his arm, he's got up to the second level, and if he just keeps his feet moving, he's not getting a flag there because you're going to be able to crowd the situation if you get closer to the guy once you make contact with your hands. He just basically plants his feet, outstretches the arm, effectively draws the flag because it's too obvious. But he celebrated after, and I thought, like, I remember just thinking at the time there was that, and okay, the tripping penalty, yeah, you'd maybe get away with that another day. And then him and uh, Tunsil got beat for a sack off Bosa, which kind of all looked to be a little bit easy. But that play and that moment, him celebrating as he's getting flagged, doesn't even realise he's done it. For me, was one of those things. It's bad coaching, and it's at times it's looked a badly coached team. But I just think that it's the crux of our issues is misevaluated talent. Kenyon Green being obviously the big sore point. But that internal 3 spots when your best pick is a 6th round guy, and if you go back and look at the comments for Nick Cassera when they drafted Jared Patterson, they weren't overly enamoured by getting him. And he's probably the best out of the 3 at the minute, and one's a 1st round pick who you extended. Okay, you didn't draft, but you extended. And then a guy in Juice Scruggs, you went to the 2nd round, traded up to get him, and it's been underwhelming. There's been plenty of other guys drafted subsequently at lower spots that have contributed in other situations better in the league. So I feel that is the Achilles heel of this team, and I don't know how fixable it is in one off season, but that's going to have to change moving forward. I'll have to change Sunday if you want to be good. They'll have to play the game of their lives. But yeah, just for me, that bit was just that's where the problems lie, and it's hard to cover
Yeah,
up.
I've never felt our offensive line, well, in the last few seasons anyway, it's been they never seem to be overly aggressive. They never seem to impose their will. That's maybe just how I'm seeing it, but
Oh, no,
we
100%. There was a play in the second half where they started to run the ball, and Mixon kind of got tied up, and then Patterson came in and shoved the pile, and then a couple of guys in came after. But you just don't see that enough, and it's that sort of nastiness that we just don't have here.
yeah. Well, when you look to move on to look at like how the Bills played on their offensive line in their game against the Broncos, they've got every guy pushing them forward. They're just nasty in the trenches, and we seem to be like really friendly, overly nice, a bit soft.
Too
Really.
well dressed, I heard. So I think it was Sean Pendergast I heard say too well dressed, or no, was it perhaps maybe Cody Stooks? I heard him say too well dressed. I'd like somebody to discuss me. Was I think what Cody said the other day when I was listening to him,
Yeah.
and I thought, yeah, that's spot on. You want nasty guys who are a bit off the wall, but are just going to put their body on the line and make space for your tailback or one of your wide receivers. And I just think it's a cultural thing, I suppose. Like, don't get me wrong, they're all celebrating, have a good time, but there was a lot in that game, particularly in the first half, which was bad, and it's been like that all season. So it's not going to all change just because you won a playoff game. But that, to me, there was just that one moment there, it just summed up for me. But I hope they can this new configuration, which is maybe configuration 4 now they're on this season.
Yeah.
They can maybe find some solidity and a bit of confidence, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, and it's going to another hostile environment. I'll worry about the false starts probably this coming weekend.
Yeah,
how loud it will be. That's something that's been plaguing Tunzel all year, as it does.
And he's still got a Pro Bowl vote, regardless, despite leading
Yeah.
the league in flags. Yeah, it's not a
Maybe he
popularity
got the
contest.
vote just on how many he got.
Well, after he was posting on social media about how great he thought his cleats were after we got beat on Christmas Day handedly, I think that probably tells you all you need to know about maybe the mentality there. It's fine when it's going well and you get by, but when you got to dig it out, and if we couldn't win any other games in this run, we're gonna have to dig it out. So yeah, I question the mentality, the talent, and the coaching whole mix. It's something you can't hide, but despite having that, I suppose the game came into life, albeit on a fumbled snap. and he somehow finds Xavier Hutchinson down the field for, I think it was whatever many yards, 46 yards, I'm tempted to say from memory. And until that point, they hadn't moved the ball at all, and they threw a terrible interception, CJ. But then again,
Yeah,
when
that second one.
it was that play, I think got us going. But there was still a couple of sort of poor plays after that. For me, it wasn't that moment actually. It was the scramble. On the drive for the first score, and I thought that was when he started to go, because you could hear the crowd getting into it. I think the broken play to Hutchison kind of got him going, but when he showed what he can do with his legs, which I think in these situations, you don't want to do that week 4 against whoever, on the road, because it's not worth it. But in these situations, it's do or die, so go for it. But I think when he started to scramble and get yards, and that was his biggest gain of the season, on that field goal drive, you scored 10 points with him. Somehow you led at half time, despite hardly having the ball, hardly being able to do anything. But that scramble, I think, for me, got CJ life. So I think you saw some of the worst that we've seen this season, but then some of the best of CJ this season, all within probably a 4 or 5 minute period at the end of the second quarter.
The muffed snap, that was almost the echoes of last year. Like he can make, it's like turning water into wine. He can make things happen out of nothing, and I think that's what really got it. When you listen to it, that really got the crowd back in. That invigorated the crowd, and they really got back into it. And there was like this shot of adrenaline went into everyone. Like I seen Harbaugh on the stand saying at that moment he felt that the momentum changed in the game, and it was their job to try and flatten it, and they never seemed to recover from that. And then when you add on that scramble play, that's something they hadn't seen all year from him. There probably wasn't a lot of tape of him scrambling this year, and they probably thought he was like a pocket passer this year. And then he took off on that massive scramble, showed he still has a bit of speed. He's a big guy to take down. And then when he did that, you're right, there was like no looking back for them in a way. It was good to see the best of him.
And they went after the centre of the field as well. And it was funny because they were saying the broadcast Denzel Perryman going out, but we had him here. He was a guy that wasn't good enough to continue in this rebuild. So and I know what he's like in pass coverage. So obviously they'd identified, and it was good to see us actually identifying a weakness and just continually going after it, whether that was in breaking routes from wide receiver, or whether that But I thought my reflection was because I think Schultz had at least one or two. Woods had one, Mechie had two. Obviously, the fumble to start the game off was the worst possible start, and I think actually that the fumble, which on another day sometimes just a little bit less of a touch and it's getting called incomplete, right? But that just completely unsettled the whole thing, and then it took us a while to get back into that. And I think that probably showed you the mentality or the lack of confidence in the unit as a whole, whether that's derived from the play call, whether that's derived from just the lack of skilled players that can get open. Obviously, we've lost our 2 and 3 option at the pass catching spot, but I thought it was interesting watching the game back when the game plan is to attack the middle of the field, which would normally suggest would be tight ends would be getting a lion's share of the possession, but actually it wasn't. It was a slot receiver, and I think for me, Dalton Schultz is atypical of this offensive issues. There's a player there, he's showing it, but he's consistently underperformed. He's had terrible drops at terrible times. That one at Kansas City when they got the 4th down conversion the other week there on just before Christmas, the Saturday before Christmas, and it just killed the momentum. And in the same way that Will Dissly did that on the other side of the ball for the Chargers, he did it twice and took the momentum away. But I thought that it just shows you we've not got a solution at tight end that they're willing to trust it. And I think for me, and I actually noticed you tweeted this as well, I would just give it all to Stover at this stage, because I don't think there's much to lose. I don't think there's much drop off. He looks like he wants to make contact and run guys over when he gets the ball in his hands. He looks a bit more spry. I don't know if Schultz is injured or what have you all season. That's been, or he's just generally on the decline already, perhaps a little bit earlier than you would expect for somebody his age in the amount of years he's got in the league. But he has been the epitome of the offensive disappointment. There's a player there, but it's just not in any way come together in a way. There's been flashes, but it's not been consistent enough. And I just thought that was a very interesting facet of the game plan. Despite attack the middle of the field, go up against linebackers, you think, well, it's going to be a tight end heavy day. And he ends up with 2-3 catches or whatever it is. And I think that again is another weakness that you've got Nico or bust really, or Mixon or bust, and that's kind of
Yeah.
That is the limit to this offense.
With Schultz, I generally see him as he's almost like personified what happens when you pay someone and the drop off just happens immediately. It's almost like when he got some money at the end of last season, it's like he just hasn't been here all year. Yeah, he was good at trolling some people on social medias. Was that after the Cowboys game or
Oh, I
something?
know, I saw that, and I thought, if I'd play like you, son, this so far this year,
Yeah,
I would.
I would just keep it, and I would
Yeah,
just
yeah.
keep it to myself. I would, send it in my private group chat or something, but I wouldn't put it out there to everyone to see.
Was he made a coffee or something? I remember seeing that thing.
Yeah,
I was just like, have a bit of self
yeah.
awareness
Don't
here.
when you're having the season that you're having, and Stover's. I reckon Stover's been good. He's been good at blocking. He's not afraid to.
Yeah, he just had that terrible, terrible game against Minnesota by his own
Yeah,
admission, and he's had a couple other missed blocks here and there. But I don't think necessarily, Schultz gives you much in the pass blocking game. Anyway, actually, I think Quintoriano. I know they've not put him back up on the 53 yet. They may do that for this weekend to give you another blocking option because, I think there's definitely an element there of that. It's been a disappointment, I think, to say the
but would
least. I
that
think
have come down to the loss of Brevin Jordan really early in the season
Well, I
as well?
think that was underrated. I think because he's a move tight end, and I think he just gives you that little bit of like zip across the middle that we've kind of lost. And he actually, I think his blocking game was underrated. And you were starting to see that because I remember watching him when he was coming out of Miami, and he actually could block and he could mix it with the best. It just took him a couple of seasons to kind of get to that physicality required for the pros, but. I suppose that in the same sense that we've had some, Mix has probably been one of the signings of the season. That ball security issue, you kind of went from you could add 14 points at the start of the second half and put teams away because I think that's been our big issue, right? We've not been able to put teams away. And when you get penalties, get backed up, kick a field goal, or when you just fumble the ball after a big explosive play from Meco, you're looking for 3 or 4 of them a game to break drives, and he will give you them if you give the ball in space. But yeah, Mixon kind of, and again, it's with all the cigars and stuff after. Again, if I'd fumbled the ball, I probably, don't get me wrong, you need some hell of a confidence to be at this level, and I get that. And I'm not saying don't celebrate because these games and these wins don't come around all that often. But that fumble was at a really bad spot where you could have put up minimum 13 unanswered. It goes 10 unanswered, and those are the small margins that you just can't have. And hopefully, can we grow from this game added to the experience of already playing Kansas City? But I think with CJ and Mixon showing good and indifferent, that more will be required on Saturday.
Oh, definitely a lot more.
Yeah, I think so. And I suppose the offense's struggles, I think, were epitomised. When I look back at the schedule this year, and I think of all the shitty games that we gave away, Tennessee at home, because you only need 3 wins of there, and then you beat the Bills and get the second seed. The Lions, you should have and could have beat them quite easily. If he doesn't throw
those
that
2 games
interception.
are 2 of the games that I was at and bear witness to, and that Tennessee performance was like
that was the worst of the worst Christmas day. I don't think that'll ever be beaten.
Yeah, of course, but a team coming in that hadn't scored more than 17 points all year.
Yeah,
and you let them dump on you in your own house like that.
Yeah.
So,
and then if you
ridiculous.
throw that disaster, which could easily go on your way against the Jets on Halloween on Thursday Night Football, you win those 3 games, you end up being the second seed, and you would have got the home game. And I think that's the cost of under Meco. There's been unfortunate performances where the team's just not looked ready. And
Green Bay with a bad choice of timeouts and stuff.
Yeah, that was the one I was at, and I walked out of there absolutely fuming that day because you just had to run it one more time, and you take a timeout off them, and they've got and there's potential. They've still got, I think, at least 1 in their pocket, if not 2 from memory. And but they're all games you should have won. So there's 4 games there. So this could easily been a 14-team win team, and that would have got you second spot, and you would be playing this weekend at home because I suppose as great as the defense has been, Graham, there's a big fucking difference between how they play at home and how they play on the road. And if they can somehow find the way to get that level of performance and impact on the Chiefs on Sunday, you've got a chance. But I was trying to think. I don't think we've had a dominant defensive performance on the road yet this season. And I was looking back through the games. You could maybe argue the Cowboys, but they're playing a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
I actually thought we did against Green Bay for long spells. And I actually remember sitting in the second half when Hunter got a sack. And I thought that's why you sign these guys closers. We're going to see this game out here. And it was just the fact you got 3 turnovers in the first half and only scored 15 points at half time. Was the bit that was the killer. But I don't think we've had a dominant performance on the road yet in terms of defensive output. So to think that's going to happen this weekend maybe feels to me a little bit naive, but I suppose it's the hope that kills you.
And as good as the defense has been, it's almost like you're aware at any time you'll give up that big play, which I think we've been bad for all season.
Yeah.
You know, like that was it McConkey got that huge 80-odd yarder.
Well, that was Kalen Bullock being a little bit greedy. I think he'd seen his other.
Yeah. You know, it's the one play you're waiting on all day. You know,
and you can't have that.
You're waiting on that. You know, they've been susceptible to giving up the big plays. As explosive as the defense is, sometimes they can be over aggressive in these situations. And a bit of greed there, but a bit of over aggression. You know, if you just stayed the course and
just tackles them in his down. Yeah. And I think that was a 3rd and 24 or 3rd and 27 or something like that at the time, and it was just 2 sacks back to back before it. Yeah. So it was one of those. It was one of those sort of regrettable moments where I think we've shown a propensity to look kind of semi-dominant at times, and then it's just that one big play. You know, there's been games where at the start of the season we were winning games, and obviously we went 5-1 at the start of the season, but pretty much in every single one of those games that we won of those 5, there was big plays missed downfield, it felt like, every week, and that's been an issue for them. But I think overall they looked okay on the back end. Don't get me wrong, the turnovers cover it up, I suppose, despite any performance, because you can get beat all day, get 4 turnovers like we did, and you've probably got a good chance of winning the game at that point. But I think it probably, and I actually put a bet on, and it's not going to come in, right? But I put a bet on the start of this year, Derek Stingley to be Defensive Player of the Year, because don't get me wrong, the odds were huge. He's about 1,600 quid back for 20 on. But he's not far off it. And I think
he must be in the conversation.
And I think he was just 1 or 2 interceptions earlier in the year short of it, maybe. Do you know what I mean? Because I think if somebody gets 8 or 9 interceptions, like, it's easy to box score scout, and that's what I thought. He's got the best hands in the team. You know, you hear many people saying that they've been at training camp, and I just thought, why not? 20 quid, we'll go for it. And it's kind of crept closer. I think, you know, these guys always get the awards a year after they probably should, but I don't think I've seen even prime J-Joe, even. It's probably been about it, really, but I don't think we've ever had a cornerback tandem like this, because obviously, you know, and they said that on the broadcast that Kamari Lassiter never had as many interceptions the entire college career he's had this season, and that's probably part of the confidence of playing with a guy like Stingley. But I think this is the best tandem we've had, and I think Stingley's the best cornerback this team's ever had. And his college 1 year at LSU was one of the best ever, and it was always that question: would he stay healthy? He's now finally stayed healthy. Touch wood, that continues. But I don't think we've ever seen anybody reach this sort of level of play over a season. I think he's just been phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, he just seems to be that guy that you can put him one-on-one with their best, and it'll be okay. Like, I can't remember really the last time when we could properly do that. Like, I know J-Joe and all that was really good, but it's just knowing that, they're not going that way. No one's trying him. You know, very rarely do they try him in a game, because you see what happens. He just comes away with it.
And I suppose, and this is a bit of an oversimplification, right? But I think the defense's route to success has been man coverage. So can you beat us? For a lot of time, don't get me wrong, Jalen Petrie and what have you let you down. Actually, somebody said to me during we were watching the game, do you think actually Tyree Phillips is completing pass coverage than Jalen Phillips. I need to go and watch it back a bit more to actually give you an answer on that. But you certainly didn't notice him in some ways that Jalen's been caught out. I know he's a big team guy and he's great going downhill, but going the other way at times it's been questionable. But I suppose the core formula has been man coverage, and basically they just said you've got one receiver, we'll take our chances, and then they just pretty much get five men on the line of scrimmage and make the quarterback make a decision and make the line make a decision where they think the pressure's coming from. And there's a lot of stunts and twists off that as well, and that's kind of always been the way D'Amico's kind of called the defense from San Francisco to now, and at times it looks great. But I suppose when that is the core of your formula, and you've got Creed Humphrey and you've got Tooney in the middle, Joe Tooney in the middle, two all-pro guys who shored it up. And actually, the biggest disappointment last time was the outside edge rushers not getting home, and there was a guy playing tackle who was a guard the last time and got absolutely no pressure off them. So I suppose, does that formula work against Kansas City? And that's the bit that I keep thinking of in my head in the last couple of days.
I don't know if that. I think they would have taken a lot from the last game they played against them. When we played up there just a few weeks ago, just before Christmas, you noticed there was a change in the team's manner after Dell got hurt. That obviously played a significant role in how the team performed, how CJ probably performed, and he probably carried that for a week, I would say, because he still wasn't the same guy a week later.
Well, I mean, he was that bad in that game in the last two drives. I think did we not get two or three delay game penalties? I think he was completely gone, and these are young guys. You forget that that something like that, because I think you've, as much as I hate to say it, I think you have to plan going forward that you might not ever play again.
Yeah.
Certainly at the same level, whether he comes back or not, because we've got that with Mechie right now. You can't have two of them on your team. Oh, well, we knew he was a player at one point. Well, it only matters about the here and now.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe in this repeat game, I think D'Amico have learned a lot on the way he was lining his defense up and the way he was showing. So I'm hopeful that we can actually get home. The other thing is containing Mahomes. We can't let him go for that big breakaway runs and stuff. When he breaks out of the pocket and he goes for a little 10, 15-yard wander, fake slides about 3 times, and then finally does go down. We have to keep him in front and make these decisions, because we do have 3 good ball hawks back there that will contest the catch. Bullock, Lassiter, and Stingley. Those guys have been pretty solid all year, and what they must have. Would it be 16 interceptions between them, the 3 of them?
Getting close to that, I think. Yeah, but you're probably talking that was 5th for Lassiter. I think Bullock's got 5, so that's 10, and then Sting, I think that was his 6. I said 16, 7. Yeah, 16, 17. Yeah, and for 3 players, a phenomenal return. I think the play on the back end, I think at times has been excellent. That's going to have to be an absolute strength at times.
Yeah.
Be careful with your hands, because they're just the refs. You've got to beat the refs on Saturday night as well. And I think that, and I don't have any shame in saying that, because I think, if you think back to the game the last time we were up there, if the scoop and score doesn't get flagged back for a hit to the head, which he wasn't even facing. It was one of the softest you've seen, and then actually that wasn't even the worst one. There was the one on Hopkins from Stingley that got flagged when Hopkins fell over. So you're going to have to be perfect yourself, because you've got to be a team that doesn't make a lot of mistakes. They've not been great on offense, and I think the defense could do it. I think the level of play, particularly up front, is going to have to be on par, if not better than what we've seen in big games from Will Anderson and Daniil, and they've been great this year overall. And the guys in the middle as well. And I just think that's such a funny position. I was thinking that, when Mario Edwards is celebrating the sack, and I was like, these sort of mid-tier guys, they just bump around the league, pick up 5, 6, 7 million here a year. And but yeah, we've managed to keep finding them every year, and actually cheaper ones than the 2 that left to get big contracts at Cincinnati and whatever the other one, Where did
And
Redkins
Meco
go?
said that Fat Cassie come up big. He was a big reason
But I
as to
liked
why
him.
we
Yeah, when I
managed
remember
to
he played
cycle
for the
the
Jags, I
run.
thought when he was at the Jags, I thought, when we signed him, I thought, even though they released him, we can't. It's a position that teams find expendable, but yet we've had unreal production. Tim Settle in there this season.
Yeah,
I think the whole front line has been the strength. And D'Amico said it before the game, right? And he says it to the team all the time. We'll only go as far as this front seven takes. And I,
yeah,
I think with the scrambling point you made there, this time it's different because you've got Christian Harris and LZ Shire. And I think that
yeah,
should hopefully help us compact the game at the line of scrimmage with their mobility. And then if the guys on the outside can hold and keep their hands down and not get cheap flags, because they will get, I guarantee you, within the first half, they will get a 15 to 25 yard easy move down the field with some bullshit flag. I guarantee it happens all the
yeah,
time. And if you get a chance to get Mahomes, make him feel it, because he easily comes up gimpy at times. He's had that bad ankle for a long time. Always remember that the kind of performance you need. And again, this was a loss in the same game. I don't know if you remember the 2016 game at New England, and they absolutely laid into Tom Brady that night. And it was the one where Will Fuller dropped the great pass from Brock, and we should have
oh,
gone ahead, and
yeah. It was
Fedora
the
had scored before
Osweiler game.
halftime. Yeah. And we actually played pretty well. But I just remember when Clowney threw, and you wouldn't get away with this now, by the way, because the rules have got softer, uh, that he threw Brady to the ground, and he was pissing and moaning and bitching at the ref as soon as he went down. But we just absolutely dominated them that night, and that was without Watt,
Yeah,
pretty much from memory. And we were Bernardrick McKinney was playing some of his best ball at that time from memory, and we absolutely went after him. It's going to have to be one of those where you can almost see them visibly upset, but the refs have got to allow it to be harsh but fair. Because
yeah.
if it comes to ticky tacky, his face mask got off
I
the
off
guy's
the
hand
glove
as he's
coming
going past him.
through or whatever.
Yeah, all in the bullshit. Then if that's the kind of game it is, I think we can forget it. But I was thinking that the other day, that was one of the best defensive because there were people were talking about that on Saturday night. Was that the best defensive performance for the Texans for a long time? It probably was, but I think when I think back at that, I just remember thinking we've got them here, but we just couldn't score points. And I hope it's not a repeat of that, because Graham, I suppose you want to banish those memories, but the biggest memory we all want to banish is obviously that 24-point lead blown in 2019. I think that's
Yeah, they were
you
talking
could
about that
banish
on
that
Good
by
Morning
signing.
Football. They were talking about that game on Good Morning Football, saying that was
Hmm.
the start of the dynasty. That game,
Yeah, probably
that
was. Yeah,
Texans game.
yeah,
Um, that was the start of the dynasty, and it was like what a fitting way it would be if it was the Texans who come in and ended the dynasty, like
yeah, yeah.
got that revenge and put them to the sword as such, and exercise the demons of that game. And because we all know we should have been out like sailing in that one, and it still
Yeah,
haunts
I
us to this
always
day.
remember the punt. If they just had not gone for that fake punt,
Ugh,
when you gave them the short field, because remember Kenny Stills gets the ball free. Everybody's looking at Will Fuller thinking it's a screen, and they just throw it in behind to Stills, and and you just never know. You never know what could have been that day, because we would have played Tennessee at home if we'd have gone through.
yep,
And I think that was. I remember just thinking. I remember just thinking that was the closest we've ever felt. I kind of hope this season would, because if I think of this team now, that team is, well, pre-injuries, that this team is definitely better than that. We're definitely better on defense to hold the game, I suppose. But you just never know, because Mahomes is the X factor, and that's why they will, as long as he's there, regardless of that roster composition, as long as you've got a decent line, which they do, um, and serviceable pass catchers, they will find a way to win more games, because they just kind of out-edged us in the last one without doing anything particularly spectacular. They just
I was
and
looking at their
and
numbers earlier, and they weren't
yeah,
spectacular. They,
no,
they,
and they've
they
not
never
been
really,
anywhere near their standards.
no, not at all. And what better time to get them is probably when they are in what would be a Chiefs slump, or what would be considered a Chiefs slump, um, and us coming off of what was by many a walk in the park for the Chargers. That's the thing that
Yeah.
would have had me G'd up for that game all week, is people saying that you're only on at that time on the wild card weekend because they want your game over with because you're going to get beat. You know, like Rex Ryan saying it was a bye week, playing the
Yeah.
Texans. We were going to be a walk in the park. I don't think enough people around the league that aren't within the Texans fan base really watch enough of the Texans to understand what we do have when we play well. That's often the thing that kind of annoys me about. There's people who watch football, but they like to hang around and watch the big teams. They don't really watch us per se, and they just really see what they're given on any of these highlight shows, and we're never really
Yeah.
featured
Yeah.
that much, and no one really
Yeah.
talks about us. So whenever we're mentioned, everyone's just like, it'll just be a walk in the park. They're just the AFC South, they come
Yeah.
from that division, and
Which I never get, because we've been sort of, America's third biggest city in terms of population. It's
yeah,
you think you would get that, but it's not. It's never been a fashionable, and I understand being there many times as you have. I can understand why, um, but it's our team, I suppose, right? So
yeah. So we're yeah, of course.
you
Um,
wanna you wanna yeah. It would be great to go in there and knock them off, because I look, if we go, if even if you did, you go to Baltimore, I would have no assertions of getting blown out by that team, because it's just a bad matchup. The shows at Christmas, they just cut us up, and it just
yeah,
wasn't even close. So nobody wants us. The league certainly don't want that, because that's kind of the byproduct of us piecing together a performance. But I suppose it goes one of two ways, and I almost felt a bit like this in the Chargers before the Chargers game. I wouldn't want I don't want a late loss, or a a valiant loss, and or almost like a moral victory, because
yeah,
there's bits of this team that really need to improve. And I think if you do have those moral victories towards the end of the season, I think people, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, kind of try and look more positively on there's some flaws of this team, predominantly probably safety, um, sort of
yeah. Don't
nickelback.
overlook them.
Yeah, and they, don't get me wrong, nobody will look over this internal line. I get that, but there's tight end, there's backup running back. We're going to probably have to find two receivers, and don't bring back Diggs. And if you think of that Stingley contract, that's going to be what, 22, 23, maybe even 25 million a year. There's going to be no discounts on that, particularly when you see who his agent is. So the window is closing, I suppose. So it's like, do you get through on fumes and then hope for a miracle? Because Baltimore have choked plenty of times in the playoffs since Lamar's been there. Despite looking great at times, they've always found a way to fuck it up. Um, but there's a little bit of me. I don't want it to be real close, and take the moral sort of high ground because we ran them close. I'd rather we go in there and we put on a performance that warrants us going through. And look, I'll take a jammy shitty one. Obviously, you would. But I don't want that to. I don't want that to cloud the clear issues on this team that need to be improved, because you've really only got this year, next year, and kind of the year after, and then all of a sudden you've got 5 or 6 contracts taking up a huge percentage of the salary cap,
Yeah,
um, and you're going to have hope that next year and the year after's draft is kind of similar. You might not get as good as this year's draft, to be fair, but you're going to need similar levels of 1 or 2, if not 3 players coming through to contribute immediately every year to fortify the roster. So the window does close, and if you don't keep drafting well, your opportunity, you quickly become the Bengals, right? That's of this season's great quarterback, great talent wide receiver, but the defense cannot defend for shit, so they're not a contender, because of that, because the roster isn't balanced. And I don't know. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen. I kind of had a sneaky feeling we'd get by in some way there at the weekend. This one is just like, it's small percentages of hope, I suppose, isn't it? That it's the
yeah,
hope that kills you, and it always will be. But I just think, it's like, it, there's a lot of hoodoo to get by. There's refs to get by. There's Mahomes, the biggest factor to get by, and then being in that environment, it's not easy. So what has to happen, do you think, on Saturday night? I keep remember myself say that, for this to happen.
yeah. Definitely containment of Mahomes in the pocket.
Hmm.
Like, I don't like when you get see when you it's almost like the Herbert situation when he is properly pressured and doesn't have an outlet. I think his numbers do drop, and we've seen it early on in the season. I think with the Chiefs when you've seen how frustrated Mahomes can get when things aren't going his way in the passing game. I really think Mahomes is the kind of guy who wants he likes the team win, but he wants to be the reason the team won. He doesn't want it to rely on the running game or this and that, you know. So if we can just get that pressure on him properly, and when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, we'll have to find a way to establish the run.
Yeah, Mix has got to go for 100 at least, I think, and
he has to.
And we have to win the time of possession, because I think when I was there in 2019, and it was Carlos Hyde running the ball that day. I think he ran for 120 or so. But the biggest thing was you just kept Mahomes off the field. So if you just control the time of possession by running the ball, you have to find a way to do that. Whether it's gimmick plays, whether it's change ups, whether it's plays you've never ran before that they're not expecting at times, because you can't be reliant on Mixon getting hit in the backfield and then and finding a way to get 3 or 4 yards. You need them to be getting 4 to 6 yards every time for it to add up and to put you in nice, manageable passing situations, because we can't have cheap turnovers. We've got to win the turnover battle, and you've got to control the time of possession. And it's a lot to ask for.
Now, does CJ have to use his legs more this weekend?
I think, yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think you could almost, in the same way the Bills do that with Josh Allen, you could almost scheme up a few, where you get the whole play to go to the right on a play action, and he's got an easy 10 yards to scramble for a run if things are not open, and almost like add that wrinkle to the playbook, I think, because you're going to have to, without Diggs and without Tank and with the rest of the guys just not being anywhere near the required level to make an imprint on games. And that might be another. You might need a third facet on the offensive side of the ball. Somebody non-Nico to have 60, 70 yards of 5 or 6 catches to make a big imprint on the day.
Now, is that up to us to involve Johnson more, or do we start trusting Hutch a bit more? Now, I think Hutch is a pretty good set of hands, and I would definitely be trying to get the ball to him more than forcing it to Mechie. Like, we tried to force the ball to Mechie far too much at the weekend, and
after that's CJ's relationship with him, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, but it just wasn't working at all.
Yeah. And do you know when he scored that touchdown against Detroit early in the season? I thought, right, this is the moment that he kicks on now, because it was a great catch, it was a great route. So it's there. I look, he's gone through a lot, in terms of the ACL and then get cancer. But I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter. Can it really? Now, like, it's good that he's recovered and he's back, but he's not been anywhere near the player they thought they were drafting in the second round. So I think it's. Yeah, we're going to have to find somebody, and it might be Johnson that we get some production from, because we're going to have to. It might be Cade Stover, it might be but we're going to need a secondary receiver to be. We can't have Nico for 120 yards and everybody else to have 3 or 4 catches for 18 to 25 each. It's just not going to be enough. So there's just so much needs to go right. Not impossible by any stretch of the imagination, but it's certainly a tall order, but it's going to have to be the best offensive performance of the season. Because, again, I go back and look at the games, and I don't remember a performance that was great all year. There's some decent points totals there against two New England and Dallas. But when you watch those games, it wasn't good for long spells. So, I think you can have spells of lack of output if the defense can cover you, but you can't expect that for more than a quarter and a half. You're going to have good 2.5 quarters of output, with multiple sixes.
Yeah, you have to help.
Kicking threes is just is a defeat before it's happened.
Yeah, and you have to help the defense out, because, as we all know, defense will get gassed if they have to be on there saving the day.
Yeah,
like after every quick 3 and out.
Yeah, you can't have any three. Yeah, you can't have any 3 and outs. I would say that's.
You have to find a way of moving.
We're getting a list of all the perfect ones, but yeah, having 3 and outs, or multiple is just it's just a recipe for disaster, because the more they get to dig into the playbook and get a flow, then that's where Andy Reid just goes into a kind of sphere of his own. And I think that's the bit, that they've got, two coordinators on either side of the ball there that are far more experienced, far more in depth, and have that nuance of playoff football that's made that team back to back champs. So there's I don't think how many teams have won it 3 times. My general football knowledge is not great,
Yeah, not
um,
not not
but
great
I
on
would
that.
suggest
It
none, if
must be a
any.
small handful.
Yeah, I don't think any, if I'm honest, because winning it twice is some achievement. Winning it three
Hmm.
times, they didn't really look like losing loads of games, but there was lots of lucky ones that they scraped by. Denver at home when they missed a field goal, being the biggest one that stands out. They've not been impressive, but they've been efficient. So you can't leave the door open. And I think the biggest thing is we need to find a killer instinct. If they open the door, put your fucking foot through it, because otherwise you'll
Yeah,
you'll you'll yeah you'll find it. You'll find the traffic and the momentum going the other way very, very quickly, and it'll
I've
be a
said that
case of
so much this year. It's like we never seem to put our foot on anyone's throat. When
yeah,
we've got them down and we're
yeah.
beating on them, we
It's
just
that
seem to
lack of
like
killer
slack
instinct.
off.
Yeah,
Yeah, like the Lions game,
yeah,
we were absolutely killing the Lions, and then we didn't do
yeah,
anything the whole second half. And then they get a walk-off field goal to win it, and you
yeah,
leave there
yeah.
going,
That's
"What just happened?"
yeah.
You know?
And again, they're a team that they don't look on. All teams are touchable if you can imprint yourself on the game, and I think the defense does that with a level of physicality. But right, what we said at the start is that your offensive line is the way you imprint yourself on the side of the ball, because you can't do it with skill players because you get a flag. That's the way that you get into games, hold it and see it out. And I think it all starts and ends up front on the offense, and so it's going to have to be an all worldly career leading performance by all five guys, for it to go past. And it might have to be Fisher's best game since he's got the starting role. Probably going to have to be Scruggs' best game, and I think just get in there and pose yourself on the game, and we'll give ourselves half a chance. But yeah, there's a hell of a lot that needs to go right, Graham. I think before we can even
Yeah,
consider, we're looking at the fourth quarter thinking we're still in this. If you get there, then great.
yeah,
But a lot's going to have to go right just to get there, because they say that the fourth quarter is a game in itself.
yeah. It is. Me and my father-in-law, when we talk about the Texans, he's based in Houston. That's where I'm always out there. But when we're talking about when we see other teams line up against us, it's like even their kick guys involved with their offensive line. Like their offensive line will purposely wear the same color of gloves as our guys' shirts.
Yeah, yeah,
Like even that, like when we're going up against guys wearing white, Tunzel will be wearing red gloves, so he sees holds all day, every day, because it's just like the most obvious thing. You need to like learn all that, just play it all the way down that dirty, and just be like, let's just find ways to maybe get away with a hold. Because I don't know about you, when I'm watching a Texans game, I'm constantly going, how's that not being picked up? How's that? When
yeah.
Will
So
Anderson
you
or
keep your hands
Hunter's,
inside. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and there's a guy got him around the neck, and you're
Oh, there's
like,
been a lot of flags that both on Will and Danelle that have not been called this year, but
yeah, and I'm like, what is
um,
happening here? But
yeah,
it's maybe just the league.
yeah. I
But
just hope there's no shitty calls that turn this game
yeah,
in the way that we did the last one, because if they get that scoop and score, and then I think they end up going up at least 10 points by that point.
yeah,
You're in with the right chance, because then they've got to change it up a little. So yeah, hopefully we just get down to the fourth, Graham. I think, and then we'll take your chances from there. But
take it from
you
there.
just never know. Um, I can guarantee whatever happens, it'll be a tough watch, good or bad. So that's for
Yeah,
sure.
I've got a defib fitted in my house now. No, I haven't.
Yeah. Oh no,
Not
it
really, but
is it
thought
is
about
some
it.
of the performances, even when you thought it was impossible to kind of lose their grip on the game, they've managed it in some way.
Yeah,
Um, but hopefully we're back here next
yeah.
week talking
Gotta stay
about
hopeful.
another game, because this is the business end. This is where it all counts. Everything you do before this is all leading up to this point. It only matters what you do from here on in. That'll all that the season will be ever remembered for. And the Bengals, like they said in the broadcast, went 10-7 or 10-6 probably next time before the 17 game, and they went to the Super Bowl. So it's not unheard of. You can get hot.
Yeah.
So do the
And
Texans
it's the
take another
same.
step?
It's the same four teams playing this weekend in the AFC that played last year in the AFC at this
Yeah,
round. You know,
yeah,
but they're just a different version of it. So maybe, just maybe, we got the right rub of the green this time.
yeah. I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, you just got
You
that
know, and I hope
little bit of luck.
Josh
That's all you
Allen
because
goes
you.
and does his business against Baltimore. If we can sort out the Chiefs, I would probably take the Bills. You know,
Yeah,
in the next round, if we get to talk about the next round.
yeah. No, exactly, exactly. Yeah. It's just great to be here. It's been a long time coming. You wanted this season to be an improvement on last year, and I
Mm-hmm.
suppose running this game closer or being within the fourth quarter is an improvement because that showed your team got better despite key injuries at key spots. Probably
Yeah.
three of your top five pass catchers won't play because they're injured, but that happens at every team every season. So you can only play with the guys you've got. But it's going to be the biggest if Bobby Slowick wants a coaching job and wants to stay within that, then this needs to be one of his best game plans he's had
Yep.
in his career, if not the best. And you never know, we'll give him a chance. But yeah, thank you, Graham, for your time. Thank you, everybody, for
No.
listening. It felt like we had something to talk about. We're probably nostalgized a fair bit rather than actually talking too much about the game at the weekend. And despite, because I was thinking we didn't mention the interception that never was, that could easily been one of Derwin James, that intentional grounding call that wasn't. So, there's a lot that went our way, and we're going to need that again on
Gonna
Saturday
need it.
nights. Big time, big time. But you never know, but at least we're in it. And there's a lot of teams that aren't. It's what we're right now.
Yep.
So thank you, everybody, for listening. I don't know when the next episode will be, but hopefully we'll be back next week, talk about a game, and then we'll see
Next
where we
week,
get
yeah.
to after that. If this laptop holds up and the subscriptions and all that kind of stuff still run, I don't know. But as uncertain it is, as uncertain as the result may be, let's upset the odds on Sunday and get a win. Let's get another one under the belts this season. But thank you, everybody, for listening, and let's go Texans on Saturday night.